Welcome back for episode 3 of Born to Run, The Naked Truth, a broadcast dedicated to examining all the claims, conjectures, and theories I proposed in Born to Run. In this episode, we get to reunite with the cover boy himself, Billy Bonehead Barnett, the runner who was featured on the cover of Born to Run. We sit down with Billy to catch up with where he's been for the past 15 years, but also to examine some of the things about him that no one really knew. Billy has this appearance of being a happy-go-lucky, carefree guy, but secretly inside, he's like Batman versus Bruce Wayne. He's down in the lab, tinkering with his body, trying to figure out exactly how to train, live, and perform his very best. Since he moved to Hawaii about 12 years ago, Billy has become known as the Ghost Runner. He will turn up at a race at the last second, sign in under an alias, win, and then be gone before anybody else has shown up to claim their medals. That's the kind of lifestyle Billy Barnett is living today. We'll also be joined by his wife, Dr. Alyx Barnett, a trained coach and nutrition expert. Enjoy episode 3 of Born to Run, The Naked Truth. So why don't you recap it, man? Where have you been since, what's your life been in a nutshell since 2006?
Well, I've been living on the big island of Hawaii in Volcano, kind of just for the love of all the mountains, trails, ocean kind of activities here. So I've just been here living and loving and teaching high school. So I can't complain.
Yeah. So how about that little trip? So what brought you to Hawaii in the first place? Hey, Cosmo, what brought you to Hawaii in the first place?
And my brother was living over on Oahu, so I went to visit him and ended up coming over to the Big Island and just falling in love with it and deciding that I needed to figure out a way to live here indefinitely. So I've been here about 15 years.
So far, so
good. The last I saw you, Billy, was when you were, I think, headed west and you stopped in Jackson Hole. Was that kind of during the move?
Pretty much where I live. I lived in Bend, Oregon for about a year and just missed the ocean too much. So I came out here and I've been here ever since. So right around the time.
Very good.
So I think the big misconception a lot of people would have thinking about you, Billy, is that, if they read Born to Run, they just think you're a savage wild man who just turns up in a race, jumps in, tears it up and leaves. And I think what they really don't appreciate is that you are extremely knowledgeable, disciplined, and focused athlete. And so I got 2 questions about that. Number one, did you evolve into a more thoughtful athlete, or were you secretly like that from the beginning?
It was like that from the beginning. It was just kind of I think just a misconception that if you're not, if you don't have all the newest gear and technology and talk about it obsessively, that you're not really knowledgeable. So I think from the beginning, I have my background is studying exercise physiology, and just kind of taking a deep dive into it and learning about the George Herbays and the Arthur Lydiard and just kind of that style of health and fitness. And so I've kind of had that that background all along, and that's just a small I figure it's a whole lifestyle. It's not about wearing the newest dry fit shirt and wearing that to the supermarket. That doesn't mean you're fit. It's just kind of a whole lifestyle.
I love it. We're talking about lifestyle. Cosmo is living the lifestyle. He's just charging back and forth. So I remember you made a comment back in the day that you would show up at races and people would look at you and go, "Oh, wow, people still wear cotton."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, or even like after a race, I'd be walking around like, "Did you even do the race?" And then, and then they would call the winners up and they'd be like, "What? You were in the race?"
Yeah.
So I think it's just a matter of how you a whole attitude towards it. It's not about, it's just about living the lifestyle, not about having, broadcasting that or, broadcasting that you run or do triathlons or, that kind of stuff.
I think
you under broadcast to the point where in Hawaii you were known as the Ghost Runner, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I just don't like the attention of it. So I would leave right after the races and not want to get on. I refuse to get up on a podium. That's my kind of philosophy. Never get on a podium ever again. So
you just show up, run hard, have a
And
great
then
result, and then you're back in the car heading to the Waffle House before anybody knows it.
Yeah, exactly. Or heading to the water, or just heading off to the next thing that I want to do in the day, you know?
Yeah. So you came into it with this kind of like Batman. Everyone thinks that you're Bruce Wayne, the partier, but secretly you're down in the cave figuring out exactly how to sort of micro dose and micromanage your health and nutrition. Now, Alyx, you came from a completely different perspective in the sense that whereas Billy was kind of the Spartan ultra athlete up in the mountains, you were in MMA, bodybuilding, ultra triathlon. You came from a total strength and power background. How did your own thinking evolve?
So I was a runner before any of that. So it kind of just was always like a sideline thing, for me. I ran in college for a semester and it wasn't for me. And then after that, I wanted to do anything that was unique and not running, and something that was hard for me. And my body type is not super runnery, if you could, stereotype a body type. So I was really interested in like building muscle and gaining strength. And I think that actually translates better to ultra running than most people realize. I think if you look at a lot of the road elite runners per se, I probably can't run anywhere near their marathon time, but I'm pretty confident if you give me 100 miles, I could beat, a large portion of them. So it's kind of an interesting.
Like the guy next to you.
Yeah.
I could beat him at 100 miler.
Well, at least 100 miler.
If it was hilly enough.
Right now, Billy, right?
No way.
I don't know. At 7 months pregnant, maybe not, but
Yeah, right.
Alyx, I'm curious about your own education in terms of food and nutrition. So you started as an athlete super young. You were an equestrian, an endurance equestrian as like a 6-year-old, right?
Yeah. So I started to go to school. Actually, my very first semester, I wanted to be a special ed teacher. So we have a lot of common interest. And then I realized I would never have the patience to deal with the parents. I love the kids, but the parents would be a problem. So I quickly switched to a nutrition major. And so I did that. At the same time, I was personal training. I was working at the gym at my school, all of those things. So we had a lot of kind of similar parallels in that. And then I was coaching nutrition for bodybuilding athletes, and I kept running into over and over and over again, people, specifically females, but people of both sexes and genders, and being attracted to bodybuilding because they were trying to hide an eating disorder. And I kept going, I've got a degree in nutrition, but I'm not qualified to deal with your body dysmorphia, your anorexia, your binge eating disorder. And so I looked into different programs to go back to school because I kept referring my clients out to therapists, but I was even still, why is there such a large percentage of people doing sports that are unhappy? These are the best athletes in the world and they're unhappy. So what's the point? And so I went back to school actually for a natural medicine degree out of a school in India because it was more affordable than a psychology master's that I was looking at Berkeley. So it was really interesting. And I really did get to focus on nutrition as much as I wanted, and the psychology of people's relationships with food and what that looked like. And I think that's really helped my practice. This is your turn. We're chasing our toddler. So
Nice.
But yeah, so that was kind of my delve into being very nutrition specific, is just kind of looking at why if the information is accessible for everybody, why doesn't everybody have something that works for them? And people, when they pay for a nutrition program, they're not necessarily paying for something they could Google to eat more vegetables and eat lean proteins.
Alyx, you bring up such a massively important point about athletes being unhappy. And now we're watching Cosmo, and no one laid out a training plan for him. He didn't warm up. He didn't taper. He just wants to move,
Yeah, he just
to the point where you got to get a lasso. And I think this is the major point is how can we restore that sense of joyfulness? And I also think you hit on the major point. The very first chapter of Born to Run 2 is your fork is not your coach. so many people get involved in exercise as because of their relationship with food. How many times people say, well, I only run so I can eat wherever I want, or I started running to lose weight. And if you take that approach right from the get-go, you're already behind the eight ball. You're running to try to catch up with something that you'll never catch up with. Do you run into that a lot?
Yeah, I think that is 80% of people who contact me. And then there's the 20%, they're already athletes. They really want to like tailor their nutrition or their workout plans to like reach a certain level. But I think a lot of people who reach out, they get into some sport, whether it's running or bodybuilding or whatever, because they're not happy with what they're doing in the kitchen. But like I think the main thing is teaching people to let go of perfect, because so many, if you're doing 80-90% good, it's gonna be fine. Like right before we hopped on here, I started prepping dinner and Cosmo had a diaper issue, and then I had to, we're gonna have some Brussels sprouts that are a little extra crispy at dinner tonight. But that's life, and I don't think that that's an unhealthy thing.
Billy, was your eating pretty much dialed in when you met Alyx, or tell us about your sort of eating evolution?
Yeah, so I guess it's definitely evolved and it's still evolving. But right now, I've kind of come to the conclusion that like a lower carbohydrate works best for me. Like I'm not talking about like strict keto. I'm talking about an appropriate amount of carbohydrates, which is very minimal, and it's not any simple sugars. I'm talking about sweet potatoes. I'm kind of more complex carbohydrates like that, and it's like directly involved with running as well, in terms of intensity. So if you're most of my runs are super easy pace, super easy. So it's directly related to the nutrition. I'm not like out there burning all my glycogen stores all the time and craving more of the carbohydrates. So it's kind of all related. It's kind of the whole lifestyle of of eating that way, like eating lower carbohydrate and also less intensity. And that's kind of evolved over the years. So I guess I started out maybe 7 years ago of like just kind of experimenting with like hardcore, like really strict keto. And I think now it's just good to kind of I like to periodize that. Or I'll go through, like, because it's not really that kind of sustainable to live that way. I don't think we're healthy to live that way. But when I'm talking like lower carbohydrate, I'm eating, talking about like sweet potatoes, more complex, and never. So I think there's so many different philosophies out there. It's almost like a religion or like political, something political. So I think we can all agree like that simple sugars are bad and like poison. So I think just starting from like simple sugars and
skipping
like
the drive-through to eat something you made yourself.
Simple sugars and like seed oils, and just if we can just like eliminate those, like, well, that's half the battle right there. And also, dialing back the intensity on 90% of the time. That's from what I've encountered, that's really hard for a lot of people to do, to the point where I don't even like to run with people because they're always trying to run it like way too hard of a pace.
Yep. Was there one time or one moment that you can remember when it was kind of, for lack of a better word, your aha moment that this was working for you, or was it kind of a slow process?
I guess it was kind of a slow process. It was after kind of like a long time of like crash, like kind of completely crashing, definitely, especially in like longer, like 50-mile races and things like that, where at around mile 40 or mile 70 of 100, like the wheels would just kind of fall apart, and it was all because of the simple sugars. So I was saying, man, there's got to be a better way, and just kind of experimenting with different things. And then it's kind of just over the course of everyday running, like, wow, I feel a lot better. I don't feel like inflamed. I don't wake up feeling stiff or wake up in the middle of the night when I have to use the bathroom like hobbling around. It's just kind of, it just alleviates a lot of the inflammation, kind of eating lower carbohydrate and lower intensity.
So I think a lot of people are probably pretty at least knowledgeable or aware of what keto or low carb kind of entails from a lifestyle standpoint, but give people an idea of what you would do from a nutritional standpoint during a race that might be different from the typical way about going about this, that is really points back to that kind of low carb ethos.
I guess it's like different for like during a race, I'd incorporate more carbohydrates, but not like, I'd stay away from the goos, like the goos and gels, and just try to stick to more solid foods, and even the drinks, like a lot of the kind of the drink, mixes are it's kind of a lot better on my stomach. The goose just kind of destroyed my stomach, and a lot of people's, but for
And do
years,
you-
that's kind of like, this is what you do when you run a race, you eat goose, and that's kind of most people's introduction into kind of endurance.
and with that, would you kind of eat during a race more by feel and hunger and intuition, or would you stay kind of on a strict, 30 minute regiment as far as what you're eating? Or do you find that you eat even less?
I found that I kind of have to kind of be on top of it and look at my watch. I won't eat altogether, then I'll just completely crumble.
Right.
In 30 minutes, I don't want to eat, but I know I have to.
Yeah.
So it's like, I mean, there's things that we like know that's by science is like proven that we need, and just by following those kind of standards, we can do ourselves a lot better. Yeah.
Alyx, you and I talked about your coaching of clients, and it's easy to theorize about what you should eat. But the difficulty is, you're a working mom, you got 3 kids, you got to get out the door, you got to put lunches together. How have you been able to guide your athletes that you coach in ways that they can make better choices easier?
I think if they're willing to do some basic meal prep, I'm not saying you have to like have everything cooked for a week in advance, because if it's just in the fridge for a week, it's going to be gross. But you can do some basic things. Like, I was very strict vegan for a very long time, and then we have chickens that are laying eggs in our yard, and I'm more on the, I'd say, on the environmental side of that ethic. So like for me, like, well, why would I pay for tofu that's being grown in the, South America, processed in the States, shipped to Hawaii, or can eat an egg that's in my yard? Like, it doesn't. So like for me, I'm like, oh, hard-boiled eggs. We still do some soy. You do, like, we got 1/8 of a cow from a farm 2 miles away. So like we'll prep kind of like the proteins in the house, and then it's a lot easier to just kind of do a 5-minute meal and get out the door. I think having things as a mom specific, like, toddler specific mother, so not the most experienced mother in the world here, but having things that I know he will eat, that if I end up eating them, or if they end up being my snack because he's decided it's terrible today, then that's okay. So like just feeding the whole family as a unit nutritiously. Like sometimes that means, like yesterday at the beach, I had some chopped up apple that apparently was the worst thing I've ever offered him. Normally he loves it, but it wasn't a bad snack for me either. So it was like, I think a lot of moms fall into the trap of, my kid's eating goldfish, so I'll just have a couple handfuls of that. Or, they feed their kids I don't want to sound in any way judgmental, because I understand why it happens, but they feed their kids prepackaged things because the kids are excited about the labels or the sugar or whatever. And it's easier than having a fight, but in doing so, they're doing the whole family a disservice. And I think they're unfortunately probably setting their kids up to prefer those tastes of foods that are,
Yeah,
you contributed. I'm sorry, get Billy.
I was going to say, a big thing is just planning ahead and having things ready to go, so you don't have to think about it. Or when you get home from work and you're exhausted and you went for work, you ran, you just have something already ready to go that's healthy and nutritious.
Yeah, Alyx, you contributed a great recipe. By the way, I got to say, this is one of my favorite pictures in the entire book. This one here of you, I'll post it differently, but I love the fact every time I look at that picture, you don't look like an ultra runner. You look like a kid playing in the mud in the backyard. You look like you're having so much fun. There's no pressure, pure joy.
I didn't have any. I did hurt. That was hurt 10 months after I had my son. So I hadn't lost my baby weight yet. I hadn't trained. I got in like 14 days, 15 days before the race. And I was like, yeah, I can do it. Like it's a mental race. It's not hard. And I actually had a PR there because I didn't care. And, like Billy is got to be more specific because his GI issues are, a little, but I was just like, I'm going to eat candy all day. And so I was having a good time.
That's right.
Candy all day and, seeing all my friends, and ended up PRing the course by a couple hours and on the podium. So I was, 20, 30 miles a week. So I was having a great time, but I think kind of taking that attitude into races does help too.
Right.
You contributed a great chia breakfast pudding to the book.
Oh
And
yeah.
can you tell us how you arrived at that recipe and why?
So I really like chia seeds because a lot of my clients tend to be a little low on fiber. And chia has protein, has fiber. It's a great way to get somebody who doesn't necessarily love vegetables some basic fiber and things moving. So I look at people primarily, I look at their health first. And so fiber is always kind of on a higher priority level for me. And if somebody's 50 or 60 and they hire me, and they've never eaten vegetables, they're probably not going to start wanting to eat 5 cups of broccoli a day, you know? So I was looking for something to do with flaxseed or chia seed. Chia I prefer slightly just because of the protein content. And I played with it and I was like, hey, how can we get this to taste where somebody who doesn't have a palate for health food per se, and someone that could just put it, they can make them all, they can put them in the fridge, and then they get up and they have 5 minutes. And so I played with a couple different variations until I came to that one. But it's one of my favorites for people because it doesn't require a health food palate. And I think that's key because that's the majority of people, if we're being honest.
Yeah, I think you were coaching a woman who was a high school principal. Was she a military wife? What was her
Yeah.
story?
Oh yeah, I think Amber, if I'm thinking of the right person. So yeah, she actually lived in Hawaii. I met her like 10 years ago when we were both kind of living in Hawaii. And then she's been on and off a nutrition client. She recently became a principal or vice principal to a school, and all of a sudden she has multiple kids. She has a husband who's gone. She's working 60 hours a week. You okay? Okay. And I wanted to come up with something that she could eat. That's Uncle. This is Dada.
Hey, Uncle. Hey, Cosmo.
But yeah, just looking at things that people who really don't have the time. And I think something that really upsets me is when nutrition coaches and dietitians tell people, oh, everybody has time. Well, no, not everybody has time to make an hour dinner every night. That's insulting. And if it was a priority, they wouldn't have hired you in the first place because they would have already been spending an hour a day cooking or 2 hours a day cooking. So I think it's a really disservice to most people when they hire a coach for weight loss or nutrition to have somebody look them in the face and be like, oh, well, you just need to try harder. You need to just get it together and cook these organic foods that I buy at this farmer's market.
That's what I would say to people. That's why.
It's kind of funny that, you're the hard ass and Alyx is more the namaste. It's all good. Even though people, I think, have the exact opposite, thoughts of your personalities.
I think so. Yeah. Like Billy's a lot. He always, I don't know why you put up with that client. I'm like, well, look at her as a whole person. She's amazing, where
So, what's interesting, Billy, is you have a lot of recipes in the book too. And what I like about them is I think people think there's one of two choices. Either you're eating Belgian waffles, smothered in syrup, or you're eating steel cut oatmeal or raw flaxseed. And you're like, no, dude, there's a middle ground out there where you can have really great baked goods that are delicious, but are relatively low glycemic and are going to give you the slow burn. So how do you guys sort of come up with your scone and pancake and muffin recipes?
I love to bake. So I've been a baker. When I lived in Bend, Oregon, I was a baker. So it's just kind of been a hobby that I kind of still love to do. And so it's, if I'm going to eat something that's higher carbohydrate, I want to know kind of where it's coming from, all the ingredients. I've even thought about like importing flour from Europe or small like farms, just because it's like I want to know where all the ingredients are coming from and they're not just like full of crap. So if I'm making something that I definitely cut the sugar in half or cut it out altogether in a lot of the baked goods, and feel a lot better because of that. And I just love the process of making something, and it's fun.
Sometimes I have to encourage him a little heavily to like add some sugar. I'm like, no, it's there for the taste. Like we need We
know
need at
when-
least a substitute.
When she was pregnant with Cosmo, she asked me to make cookies, so I made some without sugar, and she just started crying and had like a meltdown. I felt like the biggest jerk.
I specifically wanted chocolate chip cookies from this restaurant that's in Oahu, and it was like the only thing I could think of that I wanted.
Get a no sugar chocolate chip cookie instead.
It tasted awful.
I didn't think.
Oh my God! Just here's a handful of hockey pucks. Enjoy.
It's the worst.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like you said, there is a middle ground. You don't have to be. I think with everything, people just kind of take it's either this, it's either black or white, but there is a middle ground, and it's like you don't have to. It's like you don't have to go to a McDonald's and you don't have to eat, lettuce. There's a middle ground. Yeah. I mean, like only lettuce. Like you don't have to.
Yeah. You can let it be flavor driven, and at the same time referencing the ingredients that are going to be useful and healthful. Yeah. So Alyx, now you're pregnant, and are you changing your approach to eating? Is it becoming more kind of specific toward a second body inside you?
So I try to be a little more cognizant of protein. Like I said, I was vegan for 20 years, vegetarian pretty much my whole life. So protein has always been something that's been lower for me. I would say more like the 80-10-10, sort of situation for a long part of my life. But obviously when I was bodybuilding, that would change and I would be very, very specific. So I'm not nearly as dogmatic as I was when I was like doing competitions, obviously. But I'm a little more mindful, like, okay, did I have a protein at every meal? But like measuring and weighing, that's not a part of my life with a toddler. I gain a lot of weight when I'm pregnant. I did last pregnancy, and I was running 50-60 miles a week and being very meticulous and careful about food. This time I've been running less and less careful, and I've gained less weight. So I think letting go of that control. So many women have this like concept that, well, I saw this pro runner on Instagram and she hasn't gained a lot of weight. Well, that pro runner on Instagram might have hip fractures when she's 40 too. So, like I think people look at a certain aesthetic and they have an idea of what pregnancy and health needs to look like. And I just know my body likes to gain 40 to 50 pounds, and that's okay. So I think being able to be relaxed about that is really helpful. And Billy's really helpful with that for me because he doesn't care. He's not like judging me for gaining weight or something.
He just judges those people for not making their dinners in advance.
Yeah.
What else you got?
What are some of you guys' like main points? Like we all like sugar, like simple sugars. No, everybody can agree that. What are some other kind of like the main points that like some of you guys' philosophy?
Yeah, I'm kind of in your neck of the woods with going low carb. I try to periodize it a little bit more throughout the whole year based on what I've got going on. I have to deal with winter. So when I'm winter running, I'll go real low carb because that running is really, really easy. Even easier than easy because it's cold and the snow is slow. And then the snow melts and I'm able to get higher and higher. I've found through a lot of experimentation that I do need to reintroduce carbohydrates for my mountain running. So I'll even periodize it throughout the week based on the type of run I'm doing throughout the summer months and now into fall.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And that aligns with a lot of like what a lot of indigenous cultures do.
Right.
You're eating your stored fats through the winter and your higher proteins and your meats and things like that. And then in the summer you have greens. So I really like that, like eating seasonally.
Alyx, how do you make your coaching clients more mindful about the cause and effect connection between what they eat and how they feel?
I think I don't. Like we've talked, my approach to coaching is most people know what they need to do. They hire a coach because they want accountability. I try to look at what they're already doing and just make it as simple and as close to possible for them. So recently, I won't say her name because I don't know if she wants to announce that I'm coaching her, but a pretty well-known ultra runner recently hired me specific for nutrition. And I thought it was really interesting because she's tried all of these different, very strict diets, health specific diets. She's worked with nutritionists and dietitians before. She's worked with a naturopath for a long time, and nobody could understand her. So they were putting her on these crazy strict things to like help her get lean for races, but they weren't looking at her as a person. And I'm like, well, what do you want to eat? And so we talked about it, and she's like, well, I'm Mexican. I like to go out on Friday nights. I don't drink alcohol. And I'm like, cool, then let's build backwards from that. Like, let's build a program that pleases your life more and that you can sustain. And she's, you know, it's been like a month or so, and she's like, oh, I've lost more weight with you than I have with other people working with them for a year, because it's a plan that's on paper, it's higher calorie, on paper it has more flexibility, but it's something that she can actually follow. So I think that's the hardest thing with nutrition coaching, is people expect other people to be robots, and nobody's perfect. It's just kind of finding what people's habits are and then accommodating it.
Yeah, I mean, I think if there's anything you don't want to do, at some point you won't do it. And
Exactly.
so, you know, Billy, we talked about like Phil Maffetone, the Maffetone method, Maffetone training. And one thing I love about Phil Maffetone is he's such a gentle old hippie. He doesn't want to really argue, you know, he doesn't want to argue about keto. And so his approach is a 2-week test. Here's 14 days.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
I think a lot of people, like when you say like body, I think a lot of people struggle to really understand like what some of the markers are. What does that mean? I think like Polynesian voyagers, they could navigate and like feel the currents by their testicles and like on their canoe and know which way the currents were going. And I think we could all have that level and depth of understanding of our own bodies. But, you know, when we go for a hard run and we feel what our bodies feel like, to have a cortisol dump in our bodies and feel that kind of pulsing and that kind of clarity in our head, and just kind of feel how when we eat sugar and it crash, like have that awareness of what's going on in our bodies. I think we could all have that level of understanding.
I just say that is the greatest sports metaphor I've ever heard in my life. Polynesian paddlers dipping their balls in the water to feel the current.
They could feel it by sitting in a canoe. They could feel the current on the bottom of the canoe, you know, just by sitting in the canoe. That's how the level of understanding they had, and the feel of the ocean. And we could have that within our own bodies. You know,
I completely agree with you. That's what I like about Maffetone is his point is, look, man, we can argue keto carbs until the sun goes down. Why don't you just remove all the high glycemic foods from your diet for 2 weeks, go back to factory preset, and then introduce them to your diet and see how you feel, you know, rather than arguing about it, use your body as a test lab.
You know, when I was in college a lot, like shamefully, I'll admit that I drank a lot of like Mountain Dew. You know, I refused to drink coffee for the longest time. So I drank Mountain Dew instead for some unknown reason. And then when I stopped doing that, like, you know, as soon as I was out of college, I was like, holy crap, this is how I'm supposed to feel. This is unbelievable. Like,
Right.
it's like, you know, you don't really know how you're supposed to feel until you actually feel it. So it's kind of hard to explain, you know?
Yeah. Alyx, do you do anything with people? Do you have them experiment with things just to see how their body will feel afterwards?
Yeah, a lot of times I will do elimination diets with people if they're having like unknown health issues per se. I'll blood work and then also trying to do kind of eliminations to see what is triggering it. I'm not as concerned about carbs because I think most people really enjoy them. But I do really try to get people to be
mindful. A cookie,
yeah, but I get people to try to be mindful of the quality of what they're eating and why they're choosing it. And are you grabbing that cookie because you're in emotional distress, or are you grabbing it because you're legitimately hungry? Your turn. Yeah. But I think like kind of not as graphic as Billy's
that wasn't graphic
as his example, but mine is like, you know, we have a kid that his 2 favorite foods right now are a local berry that grow here and eggs, because it's what we have in our yard. And so it's like, I think learning to appreciate your palate, you know, from what's around you and getting in touch with like who you are as a person, I think will get people back to their roots. And when I was bodybuilding coaching, I really looked into the super science side of it. And ethnically different people respond to different foods differently. And I think, it was always a touchy question to be like, hey, have you done your ancestry? Do you know your exact DNA? Because that's going to help me know. But, specifically European people respond better to this, people from South America tend to, and so it was like really interesting to learn that so many people have different. And I think that's what's so silly about nutrition books is they sell a certain dogma. If you follow this one thing, or you do your celery juice, or you only eat bone marrow, whatever like crazy thing that people are selling, they sell it as this perfect idea. But in reality, nutrition through the course of our lives, through the course of our sports, through the course of our seasons, it should change. And
Yeah, it's like the periodization of it. It makes a lot of sense.
and it should just be manageable and enjoyable. Like I have clients right now that still eat fast food a couple days a week, and that's fine because the body can process it a couple times a week. They can't do it every time, but that's like their
I like
thing.
I feel math don't quote, like, would you do heroin like once or it's like you try to have heroin once or twice a week? I don't know. Like that's kind of how I feel about like fast food, and it's like never, and that's like pure poison.
Yeah, see, I love a bagel from a coffee shop, and Billy would cringe, but my body processes a bagel just fine. But I have a little more metabolic flexibility when I run than he can. I can get away with eating Skittles and having a beer, and that would wreck his stomach.
No, it has nothing to do with stomach. It's just about like again, lifestyle. It's like I want to feel good all the time. I don't want to be eating that kind of stuff.
I think I'm at it for a very broad
it's like for the same reason I wouldn't want to smoke a cigarette. It's like it goes hand in hand. It's like a lifestyle thing.
I think what you guys have is really the perfect philosophy, which is you're making different choices at certain times, but you know what the consequences are. You're making mindful choices. So Alyx knows that the bagel isn't the best thing for her to eat, but in that moment, it brings her some comfort. She's enjoying it, but she realized I'm not going to make a habit of this. Whereas Billy, you're more.
I'll buy bagels and cream cheese, but I'll have one at a drive-through for coffee, and that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, but the fact that you're making thoughtful, meaningful choices, intentional choices, and hey, I'm eating the bagel now. I'm not going to punish myself. I'm not going to feel guilty, but I know what the consequences are, and I'll rectify it later.
Right.
That's true.
Yeah, I think that points right back to the big message in the book too about awareness, and it's like what you said, Chris, is having that initial choice, giving yourself a choice and saying, okay, I choose to have this bagel now, and I might not choose to have it later. And just people are empowered to know that they can have their own choice rather than it becoming an emotional something that they don't even realize they've done until after the fact.
And
guys,
I think
we're going to click out in like 10 seconds. So I'm sorry, I just want to say before we get cut off, aloha, Alyx, Billy, and Cosmo, and thank you for bringing the first two mentions of testicles and heroin into the podcast.